Hey mathematicians, today we are going to work through an example of finding domain and range. So as you learned in an in-class activity, domain are the x values that are represented by a group of ordered pairs, and range are your y values. And what I have in front of me is something called a relation, which is just another word for a bunch of ordered pairs that are hanging out. But this is a specific type of relation, which is called a discrete relation. And discrete just means that it's made up of these isolated points. The opposite of discrete would look something like, not this one, so something like this. See how this is made by one solid set of lines that are connected together? So this is something called continuous, which we will talk about at another date, and it has a totally different type of domain and range. So I just want to make sure I pointed out to you that the type of domain and range I'm getting ready to show you only works for discrete relations. So I feel like the easiest way to do it is just to figure out what all your ordered pairs are first so that you can get your x values and your y values. So that's the first thing I did here, was just label all of my coordinates so that it's easier to pick out the domain and range. So no matter whether you're doing domain or range, they have the same set of brackets that go around them in a discrete function, or I'm sorry, a discrete relation. So I need to be careful to make sure I tell you that part, that this is only for when it's discrete. And it's these little curly Q braces right here. You'll see, this is what I'm trying to draw, but you're about to see I'm going to do a really lousy job of actually drawing them. But just for the record, this is what I'm trying to draw. And as you can see, it doesn't look that great. So for the domain and the range, you start off with these little curly Q braces on either side. And then for the domain, you're simply going to list all of your x coordinates. So I'm going to highlight them to make them easier to see. You won't necessarily always have to write them in order from least to greatest, but there are some teachers that have that preference, so that's what I'm going to do. So my smallest x value is -7. Then my next value is a +1. Now this part's interesting. See how I have two x values that are 2? Even though there are two 2s, when I write the domain and range, I'm only going to write the number once. And then finally, I've got my 7. So you just take all your values, put them in order from least to greatest, and if you have a value that repeats, you only write it once. And now I'm going to do the same thing for the range. So I highlighted all of my y values to make it easier to see, and I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to write them in order from least to greatest. So -5, then -4, and then 1, 4, and 6. So I didn't have anything that repeated, so I just wrote all of them out, and yikes, that bracket is really terrible. So to sum up, this only works if it's a discrete, like this is the method you use if it's discrete, which again means it's made up of those isolated coordinates. And you just take your x values, write them in order from least to greatest in between the curly Q braces for the domain. And then for the range, you just take your y values and write them in order from least to greatest in between the curly Q brackets. So I'd love for you to pause the video and take just a second to try to do the domain and range on your own for number 6, and then restart the video when you're ready. All right, so hopefully you did what I asked and paused the video, and now you're ready to try it yourself. So the domain, again, are the x values. So I labeled all of my ordered pairs. I'm going to highlight them to make it easier to see. So curly Q braces, I can't draw. -5 is my lowest x value, and even though there's 2 of them, I'm only going to write it once. Followed by, oh, I forgot to highlight -3. Oops. Followed by -3. And then -2, and finally +5. And then finally for the range, -7. Again, I'm not going to write them twice. -1, +1, and 3. And there you have it, folks.